Well, the African Union now set to become a member of the G20, representing 55 countries across the continent. So what's in it for this newest member? And as I mentioned earlier, the G20 is an international club of countries. They meet to discuss some of the big political and economic issues of the day, accounting for 85% of global economic output and more than 75% of world trade. Dr. Charles Sinkala, the CEO of international governance and business consultancy Akata, joins me now. Charles, good evening. Hopefully we will have success this time, but I was wanting to understand from you, what are the highlights of what's in it for the African Union? We know it's something they have been wanting and something they've been working towards for a long time.
Yes, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers this evening. And once again, thanks for inviting me. Yes, an inclusion, into the African Union being included in the most elite world governments in the world has been widely welcome. And, as a continent, we feel that probably, this might be a better chance for us to position our interests onto the global stage for those nations. But also, this has led to many to speculate about whether G20 took the decision to uplift the African continent, or does the group now recognize the vast potential that lies in the region. But of course, we ask ourselves a lot of questions as to how we have arrived onto this. And among questions other people ask is who invited who? What interests are there to achieve from both parties? Will the inclusion of the 55 countries of the African continent have the power of veto, or is it only for a photo session participation? These are questions that we would like to understand on how the part and the role will play in terms of decision making and having a mutual beneficial agreements.
So, it's interesting you say that, what was the motivation, or what were the catalytic factors that led to this eventuality or this happening? And some would say, we've had this incredible BRICS hosting in South Africa recently, where all the virtues, the economic and other human resource virtues of the continent were extolled, and perhaps, it was the nudge that was needed to push the African Union into this position. The things that you mentioned, all of the questions that have been raised, how soon will they be answered, Charles?
It is up to us as a continent. The mere inclusion has to be based on the performance that African countries now will have a say in terms of determining the agenda of Africa, as well as recognizing the geopolitics and the global interests in terms of being part of the G20 organization. As we have seen that these powerful nations, yes, they are very dominant, and some of these treaties that we signed to affiliate ourselves as a continent has advantages and disadvantages. So the question now is how do we address them onto the governmental level, that we present the national development plan for each and every 55 odd country of the African continent to make sure that we are respected in terms of attending these meetings, not only attending these meetings by invitation on the interest of the West.
Yeah, it goes back to the point you raised in your initial answer around using this as a real opportunity to prioritize our own interests. Interesting conundrum potentially that arises, Dr. Sinkala, is how will the AU navigate this, given that it is representing one bloc, but under its skirt, countries with differences on myriad issues?
Yes, indeed. Those are challenges as well that can never be left unattended to. Both organizations, the G20 organization, and as well as the African Union organization, internally themselves they have failed to address certain issues. Hence, we have seen, if we talk about the G20, the formation of the BRICS organization, where South Africa, China...
And there goes the line. I knew it was too good to be true, but I think we got to the essence of what this means for the African Union, and some really interesting questions Dr. Charles Sinkala is raising is, who invited whom? How did the invitation go down? Will the African Union have powers of veto? And just how much sway can they have in some of the policy and trade trajectories of the G20 as a whole? Important questions. And I guess the next couple of weeks, months, years even, will reveal the answers to those questions. Dr. Charles Sinkala joining us there is the CEO of international government and business consultancy, Akata.